Hi guys, welcome to this session of our Road to Funding talks. I'll just do a quick introduction with a few slides about these talks we do, and then I'll give the word over to Dario, let him talk about bootstrapping. Can you all see the screen? So I'll just have 4 slides. Our Road to Funding series of event is webinars or talks we do online. We started during the COVID lockdown, so we started doing them online, and we figured that was a great way to get as many of our cities involved. We are doing them under our project, which is called Game Hub Scandinavia. In Denmark, our sub part of the project is called Game Hub Denmark, and in Sweden it's called Sweden Game Arena. So we have some partner logos here, which is obligatory for us to show, which is good. Today's talk will be by Dario from Chop Games. I'll let him do his own introduction when he gets there. A bit about our Road to Funding events. We've had a series in the past. We have shared a bit of video. This video will also be shared online afterwards. So you can rewatch it, or we will also show it to the next generation of startups in our Game Hub Scandinavia projects, where we obviously focus on helping game startups and game development students reach their potential. I want to do a bit of advertising the next event. I can't say the topic yet, but it's going to be on February 24th. We're working on having our Swedish partners host it. So maybe make a note in your calendar for that date. Otherwise, look out for our channels and follow us here on these channels, or Facebook, or join our Discord. If you want to get in touch with people on the project, you can find our contact details here. Don't worry about it. Just watch the video later, or if you want to write it down really quickly, because I'm going to stop sharing this screen and hand it over to Dario. The chat is open. As I said, verbal questions should be held until after the talk. So, but if you have questions, write them in chat. And with that, I will hand it over to Dario to talk about bootstrapping and how to survive as an indie startup.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me fine? Yes, I see some people nodding their heads. Very good. Right, I'm going to try and sharing my screen as well. See here. Does this work? Is it full screen as well? Yes. Very good, very good. Okay, well, hello everybody, and welcome to I guess this episode of where we will talk a little bit about bootstrapping and sort of how to survive. It's going to be very much from a startup perspective. So if you're completely new to startups and the game industry, and sort of how to run a business in general, this is going to be exactly what you need. If you're already very experienced, if you have some years behind you in the industry as well, you might get some tips, or you might learn a few new things, but it's going to primarily be to those people who are just starting out. And I thought I'd just tell a little bit about myself and why I have really loved doing this sort of thing for almost 4 years now. So I would say I've always been sort of a gamer. I always loved video games, and I always had an idea that I wanted to do video games. But I never had much money to my name, as is with probably most young people, unless you come from like a wealthy family. And I thought, well, how damn do you actually run a profitable business as a young person? It's more hard than it sounds, but good news is that there's definitely help out there. And these are things that I would have wished that I would have knew when I started out. Would have definitely saved me some heartache and troubles. But I guess hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and learn from my troubles and get some tips. Chop Chop Games is the company that I was a co-founder of. I think officially the company was created almost 3 years ago now. And I say officially because we did work as sort of a company capacity before then, though not officially. And we'll get to that part as well a bit later. And so far, we have made, I think, one almost finished game, which is sort of our own IP. And we have worked on 2 different games as well. That is our own IP. And we have done a ton of projects for different kinds of people and different startups as well. Done some collaborations and co-workings and stuff like that. And we'll get to that as well. So these are the topics of today. I've put them up in 3 different categories. So the first category is going to be some really basic real life advice that honestly most people need to hear because it's surprising. And you might think some of these things are super basic, but these are the things that I've learned from just my peers, like talking to people like who are also doing startups who actually don't practice these very simple things. And I definitely think it could do some good. Then we're going to take a look at some programs and practical stuff you can actually use. And to finish it off, we're going to talk about games and what to do when you're bootstrapping or when you're running your company. So the first thing is, if you're bootstrapping and you're trying to save up to build a project, have a low cost of living. I know it sounds very simple, but it's actually very important. Especially if you're a young person, you're used to living at home and stuff, and you're not used to cooking your own food. Learn how to cook food, learn how to buy healthy, simple food, oatmeal, very good. Housing, food, and transportation are probably your 3 biggest costs that you're going to be spending money on. So definitely have those in order. I lived for almost 4 years while working on a company for less than 5,000 kroner a month. I don't know what it is in your currency, but most people will consider that very little. And I honestly never had any issues living with that amount of money. Just have to cook your own food and buy healthy, cheap food, and you can actually live for very little. And it's going to make the whole process way easier. All right. Next one, don't splurge, save. So many people, as soon as they get any money into the company, the first thing they go do is they are like, oh shit, now I have a lot of money. I'm going to buy all the things I need to work on my project. So they go out and they buy a super expensive computer for like 20,000 kroner or something. They're like, I'm going to need this extreme beast to render my game that's a 2D platformer. And I'm just sitting here and thinking, Jesus Christ, like that's 4 months that you could live for that amount of money. And again, this is actually something that I have seen my peers do. And yeah, I would definitely say, think about every single kroner or dollar that you spend. Think about, is this necessary to actually achieve what I'm trying to achieve? And always have your goal in mind. Get some skills. Most of you are probably already at this point, but if you're not, this is for the people who are still during their education or starting out. Make sure that you have some skills to actually build the games. That means either learn how to program or design very basically, learn the basic programs, Unity, Unreal, those engines. I would definitely recommend working in engines that are already there rather than working from scratch or like building your own engine. I've seen some people try and do that. Would not recommend that when you're starting out. Make sure that you know how to do many different things. Probably heard about the metaphor of having many hats. Many hats are very important when you're doing a startup, especially if you're struggling for money. The more things you can do with your time, the more money you can save. And the next big thing that you're going to also see the value of a bit later is make sure you have skills that people would pay money for. So if you are an educated graphic artist and an educated programmer, you have like a formal education or just you're very practiced, you know what you're doing, make sure that you have your skills in order and you know how to communicate that to people. That's going to be very important for making any kind of money outside of just making your own stuff. And if you are not already taking an education, definitely do go for some education, especially if you're living in a country that offers free education. And I think this is the last one, just be nice to people. It's very important. Nobody wants to work with an asshole. Nobody wants to help somebody who's an asshole. Like, there's a ton of free stuff and free programs you can take advantage of, but nobody's gonna want to go the extra mile if you're not nice to people. And I've seen many people who just don't really, either they don't have the social skills or they aren't experienced with just like talking to normal people and being nice to them. I think it's a super important thing. All right. We're moving into a section that talks a little bit about some of the programs that we've taken advantage of that you can definitely do as well. So first off, if you're currently doing an education or you're receiving SU or some kind of, I guess, student benefits, definitely start already there, building or learning how to build whatever it is you're planning to do. Don't wait until you're done. Spend your free time on it. Make sure that you know what you're getting into as well. Then if there is, oh, see there's more people joining. So and second off is research. You probably know if you're from a different country than Denmark, but research what kind of government programs you can actually take advantage of. So if you've had an education or you had a job previously, you can take advantage of the Dagpenge program, which I think technically you can get the Dagpenge for 2 years, I think, a maximum after finishing education or being let off from a job or leaving a job or whatever. And it's very important to be part of these programs because it helps you out with your money flow as well. The way that it works, or the way that it worked, at least when we were trying to get into creating our company, is that so you can't have a job while doing Dagpenge or receiving Dagpenge. You have to actively be looking for a job. But you can do other stuff in your free time as long as it's not like a job thing. So you can practice your skills. You can practice making some games on the side and stuff like that while actively looking for a job. Another thing you can do, at least again, this was what we did, I think, a few years ago, is that you can actually run your own business while you get Dagpenge for 6 months officially. I think they had it at least when I was, and this might also be different from place to place, but it's also a good way to sort of supplement any kind of income you're making. Make sure you are making a minimum amount every month. Yeah, those are like the big two, I think, free programs you can take advantage of. And in terms of free help, there's a ton of free help for startups. You just have to know where to look. So in Denmark, again, this is going to be mainly about my experience in Denmark. There's the Erhvervshus, which give a lot of free guidance and sparring for young startups, especially in terms of like very basic stuff like legal stuff or accounting stuff. They can give you advice with, but they can also, and this was the thing that we found the most useful, they can help you write applications for things like Booster and probably DFE and stuff like that, where you can write applications to get money to build your game. They can help you. They have people either on call experts, or they can give you money that you can spend on hiring experts to help you write good applications, especially if you're not used to writing applications, if you're not from humaniora or something like that. It's very useful. Then obviously an organization you're probably familiar with, Game Hub Denmark, the organization that's also running this. Really, really good to get to talk to some like-minded people, get some advice about how to get into the industry, join talks like this, just everything basically that you need. If you know how to ask the right questions, you will always get help. It's a tremendous help, and it gives you a bunch of help and free stuff along the way, depending on where you are in the process of making your game. And then there's the local meetups, gold bar, stuff like that. Very useful for just meeting people in the industry and talking to them, and also very good for talking to people and getting help, if not testing your game or giving you feedback about some things, new features you've made in your game. It's very, very good, especially early on in the process. You can find these on Facebook. Just Google, I think, Gold Bar. I don't know how, it's not that pervasive right now because of Corona, obviously, but it sort of comes and goes. And the same with the local meetups as well. Yeah, then there's stuff like game jams, which you may or may not know, where you can just go down, talk to other people, make games for a weekend. And then there's the date nights, which have been really good for us. We have, I think, every year, maybe once or twice in Aarhus and probably other places as well in Denmark, where you can meet people who are actively looking for developers to do stuff for them. So either you can go there and find people to help you with your project, or you can go and help other people with their projects. Sometimes, or most of the time, also with some kind of compensation or deal there. So it's super useful. We got, I think, 3 years ago, we attended one date night, and we had me and my partner Michael, coworker in the company. We met our sound guy, sound developer at one of those, and we're still working with him today. So super useful. Yeah, and then specifically, I guess, incubators. We are currently in an incubator called Filmbyen Aarhus. I don't even know what it's called anymore. It used to be called Ideas Lab, but maybe Game Lab or something like that. It's in Aarhus. I think there's many different ones. I think Game Hub is also an incubator as well in Grenaa, if you're closer to that. Or there's probably a few in Copenhagen as well, especially in the big cities. It's a really good place to get cheap, sometimes free resources or accommodations. I think in Aarhus we have something like you get the first 3 months for free of office space, and there's office space, internet, all the kinds of things you need. Plus, and this is the biggest thing, is that you again get to meet people who are already working on stuff, who are either ahead of you in the process and can give you advice, or people at the same place as you, where you can sort of learn from each other and give each other feedback. And there's people who know what they're doing, who've been there for years. People like us, we've been, I guess, in the same incubator / office space for almost 4 years. It's a really, really good place to just work from as well. Definitely take advantage of that, especially the free stuff. Then there's interns. This is only if you have an official company, and there's different kinds of interns. Again, this is Denmark. So we've had stuff like school interns. I think school interns are people who are doing education and have an internship during that education that they can then come and help you do something. This is very good. You can have as many as you want. And you just have to be able to sort of organize and help them, sort of structure them to get something good from them, and they can also get something good out of it for their education. And then there's the job center interns. I think you can only have one if you're a small company, and then you have to have a number of employees to be able to have more at a time. They're usually people with a few more skills than the school interns, and they can really help you push some stuff, where if you need a specific set of skills, if you need a graphic artist, or you need a programmer or something like that, they can join you for 4 to 8 weeks, something like that, and help you push something in your project, which can get you further than you were before. Yeah, and the best way to get interns is either to, sometimes you can contact the places directly. I've seen some people have success with that. So contacting a school or even the job center and saying, hey, we have a company that is looking for interns for this and that. Another way is to just have your information available on the internet. Most of the interns we had actually just found our website and contacted us. And another way is to get connections during these game events by just meeting people. Sometimes they're interns, sometimes they're looking to do something. And if you have an interesting project, they're going to come along. And then I think those are the two biggest ways to get quote unquote free money in Denmark. It's the Innovation Fund, and then there's the DFI, Danish Film Institute. And as they always say, as everybody is always going to say, free money is good money. But it's not necessarily as simple or as good as it sounds. We have honestly only had mostly bad experiences with both of them. And in some ways, especially early on, they were very good for us in terms of like building our ability to sort of write applications and know where the project is going. It sort of forces you to put some things down on paper, which is really good. But in terms of actually getting money from them, we've never been successful, though we've tried many times. And our experience is, unless you're specifically making a project which very specifically fits inside those criteria, it's going to be very hard to get something out of it, like money-wise, or if you're not already have some sort of success you can show. If you're a completely new startup and you don't have any projects that are finished, you don't have necessarily any experience, it's going to be very, very hard to get some kind of funding. And you should only do it if you have the time and you want to practice like writing applications and stuff like that. And you can read about what they're specifically searching for on their websites. If you just put in DFI or Innovation Fund, and they have different projects. There's one thing though that I would recommend looking into. We unfortunately didn't look into it ourselves, but I think Innovation Fund has a new program which specifically targets completely new startups, which basically just gives you money for a year, which is equivalent to dagpenge, if your project is, they think it has some kind of potential or something. But the one thing is, I'm pretty sure it still has to be a very technical project. So if you're just making a game in Unity and it's your first game, probably not going to get anything, but it might be worth looking into. Okay, we're at, I guess, the last section. The first one, very, very important. We have learned this the hard way many times. Don't build too much. It's in some ways it's a big waste of time unless you're actually getting some experience out of it. But always plan specifically what you're going to build and why you're going to build it. Always go for stuff like a vertical slice or prototype, depending on what your skill set is, and make sure that you don't just keep developing on the game because you don't have anything else to do. That's a big thing that we did a lot early on, because we were looking for funding. Obviously, we were looking for an investor for our game. And while we were looking for an investor, we had like a lot of emails out to different investors, indie investors and stuff like that. And there's a lot of waiting time usually. Sometimes it'll take them 1 or 2 months to even get back to you the first time. So while we were waiting, we were just like, okay, I guess we'll just keep building on our game. And eventually we also sort of finished the game, but it was like very bootstrapped. It was like even more bootstrapped than we were probably comfortable with. And we spent all our savings doing it. And in the end, we didn't get much out of it except experience. So that was a big thing that I would have loved to have told myself back then, is that if you're building a project that is especially something that you can't really finish yourself, that you're going to need some funding for in some sort of form, build enough to show investors or publishers or stuff like that. But don't just keep building because you don't have anything else to do, because you can spend your time better. You can spend your time looking for projects or looking for work for hire, stuff like that, to make yourself keep going more comfortably. And only really build the entire project if that's your plan. If you're planning from the start, okay, this is going to be a solo developer project, I'm going to start to finish build it myself, I don't want to have a publisher, don't want to have an investor, then do that. But don't just build more because you don't have anything else to do, because you can always find something better to do. Yeah, and just it's important to look at what sells, especially if you're trying to communicate it to other people. Something that we learned again the hard way is visuals sell. Number one, you gotta have good visuals, and it doesn't even have to be a lot of visuals, just like very few, very key pieces of visual, because that's the first thing people will see, and that's the first thing people will judge every single time. It doesn't matter if you have game-breaking mechanics. It doesn't matter if you have the fucking new, I'm sorry, if you have the newest technological innovation. If it looks bad, people are not gonna buy it. They're not even gonna bother. So yeah, definitely, if you don't have the graphical ability, invest in graphical ability somehow into your team, or buy art from somebody. Spend money on art 100%, and learn to make good trailers. There's so many guys online on YouTube. I think we had a road to funding thing with trailers as well, which was really good, which I attended, which was with some guys up from Aalborg. It was really, really good. So many good ways to learn how to make good trailers. There's no excuse for having a bad trailer, and everything can be found online, so it's free. All right, kill your darlings. I guess this is a bit of an, an extension of the last one. But if something, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to be working with your game, or your project, or a feature, or even like the entire game just doesn't work for some reason, it's not fun or something, don't be afraid to just abandon it. Obviously, you should, if you think there's something, you should keep working on it. You can always improve. But it is so important to be able to abandon something early on that wasn't really a good idea, because we all have bad ideas. Everybody has bad ideas. And the earlier you move on to another idea where you can get feedback, or talk to people, show people that other idea, the better you're going to have it. And remember to listen to and get feedback from other people. And that means people that aren't your friends, people that are going to tell you the truth. Just random people who who play games. Get feedback from industry people, get feedback from people like Alan, or other people who are hired by these incubators and stuff like that, because mostly they will give you good feedback and tell you the truth about sort of your project, and help you, direct you in a better direction. But also, and this is very important as well, don't necessarily take it as gospel. Because sometimes you might have a vision, or sometimes you might have a grand idea that doesn't work unless people see more of it. And sometimes, in some cases, if people only see a little bit of it, or see a prototype, they don't really get it. Or if your game is made with a very specific audience in mind, it's also important to get feedback from that audience, and people who are not in that audience might actually give you bad feedback. So it's important to have different criteria in mind, but all kinds of feedback from all people is always good, because you can always learn something. Yeah, and then it's just about pitching. Pitch your game. Talk to people about the game. It's an art. It's not something you are born. You're not born good at speaking. You're not born good at talking to people about your project. It's something that takes a lot of practice. Luckily, I had, during my education, we had specifically classes where we were taught how to pitch tech projects and stuff like that. So there was a lot from my education already, where I could draw a lot of experience. But apart from that, just every single opportunity you have, once you have something to show, once you have a prototype, or like some art, or like even an idea in some cases, just take every single opportunity you can, especially those available close to you in Denmark or something like that. And lately, especially during Corona, meet to match has become extremely popular. So make sure you take advantage of those meeting stuff, where you can arrange meetings with different companies and publishers, and sometimes even extremely big ones. Like, you can talk to Nintendo and pitch them your game, and they'll give you some feedback. And usually the feedback you get from publishers is the best feedback, because they have a financial interest in, number one, keeping the connection with you, because just in case you make something amazing. And number two, if they do have the connection with you, they have an interest in making sure that your product is as good as possible when you pitch it to them, right? Because they're always looking for the next big opportunity to make money. And if they're trying to make money from you, they're going to tell you how they think you can make money from your game. So that's super valuable. And every single opportunity you have, even if you are not ready to take an investment or take a publisher, just talk to them. They're usually nice people who won't waste your time. And I guess to some people, the boring part, remember to make money. Remember to make some kind of money to live for, because you need money to live, obviously. Save money when you have extra money and plan ahead. Always think, will I have money in 3 months? Will I have money in 6 months? Have things going all the time. That was the thing that I was talking about previously with sort of when you build your game. Don't build too much, because extra development time that you spend building, unless you can spend that time to finish the project, usually it can be spent on making money or reaching out to people or publishers or stuff like that, and making sure that you can have money enough to live for 6 months or 7 months, and then spending an entire month developing a game in the grand scheme of things might not actually be as useful. Beware of the hidden costs of running a company. This is something that we also learned in the hard way. Stuff like doing accounting takes time, takes money. Yearly reports. If you're running a company in Denmark, you have to do a yearly report every year. Most likely, you won't be able to do it from scratch by yourself, so you're going to have to buy a service which can help you make it, and even then, it's going to take time. So that's something that has to figure into your budget. Bunch of other stuff like paying your taxes through the company, stuff like that. There's all kinds of ways that you're going to keep losing money. You pay money to your bank, you pay money to everybody who is one in any kind of step from running the company. You always pay money to everybody. So make sure you always have a little bit more money than you need. Yeah. Learn to do Excel spreadsheets. Very, very good to do any kind of accounting. It's also going to help you do the financials as well. And it's also going to be very important when you start talking to publishers and investors, because they are all going to want to see your numbers and projections for how much money you think you're going to make, or what they can get out of your project and stuff like that. So the earlier you learn how to do Excel and spreadsheets and stuff like that, the better. Be sure you know how to market your skills. That's also something that comes from practice, but especially if you're a programmer, I would argue, and that's from my experience as well, if you're a programmer, you have the easiest time, because everybody is looking for programmers all the time to do all kinds of different things. So most likely somebody right now is looking to hire a work for hire programmer to work for like a few months or whatever. And if you are really good with saving money and planning ahead, you can take like 3 months of work at some other company, and then that's going to fund you for like a year doing your own project, pretty much. If you know what you're doing, and if you're a programmer, it's honestly it's that easy, and you just have to be good at planning and knowing what you're doing, and just reach out. There's tons of people looking to hire programmers all the time. That's just my experience. If you're an artist, a graphical artist, or a sound designer, stuff like that, I'm sure there's other opportunities. I don't know about them that much, but I guess it depends. You probably know a little bit from your industry if you have a formal education or something like that. And then take initiative in terms of like getting work, because most likely people aren't going to reach out to you unless they know you already. And there's lots of ways you can take initiative. For example, as I mentioned previously, going on what's called a date night, or going to events. People are sometimes looking for people to do projects. You can contact people through Discord as well. We've had some success, just like there's a game Hub Denmark or Danish games Discord groups as well. Sometimes those have people looking to hire people on short-term basis as well. Very good. Yeah, and it can be fun as well, especially if you're 6 months into a project and you sort of have a bit of a developer's block in your head or something like that, like a writer's block. It can be good to just get your hands on something else, then come back to your game with a fresh mind. And it also shows that you can work on other projects, you seem more trustworthy to investors and future people as well. If you have some projects under your belt, and we've done this a lot in the last year. We actually didn't do that much before 2021. Before that, we were mostly running on savings and just burning our own money basically to do stuff. But in 2021, we've started doing a little bit of work for hire and working for different companies and stuff. And it's honestly been really good for us. And it's given us more money between our hands as well to pay people to do stuff for us that we need, stuff like graphics. So that's been really good. And last but not least, remember to have fun. It's super important. You definitely should not do an indie game startup if this is not your passion. I could not imagine like waking up every single day living off of oatmeal and and walking or using my bicycle to get everywhere if this wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. And there's no shame in starting and attempting and going and making a game and then finding out this is too rough, or this is too rough for me, or this is not what I actually wanted to do. I want to make a bit more money. I want to start a family, stuff like that. That's, most people are like that. Very few people, I think, can actually do a startup and live off of like very, very low pay unless you actually get the big hit out. And it's very easy as well. Even if you're doing fine, it's very easy to get stuff like anxiety and feel uneasy because you're financially unstable in some points and at other points as well. And it's very important to reach out and talk to people and not doing it alone. That's like the number one thing I would say. I've been so lucky that through the entire process, I've had my coworker Michael with me, and just because we've always been two people, we always had a much easier time talking to each other if we had issues or whatever, if we felt like some days it was too rough or something like that, and together you can sort of get through it. And if you don't have somebody working with you in your startup or company, talk to other people at the incubator, stuff like that. Everybody is having a hard time sometimes, and it's important to watch your mental health. Yeah, and it should feel like a dream job. Most of the time, you don't want to be miserable and then making games, because then you're not going to make good games. Yeah, I think that was most of it. I have no idea how much time it took, probably way longer than I expected. Maybe Alan will tell me.
No, you're perfectly fine. It's about half an hour, so that's great. I think we should open up for questions. I can start with one just to get things started. Not that many put anything in chat, but you can do that now if you have questions. So I wanted to go a bit more. I wanted to ask a bit more about your journey. So when you started your team up with Michael while you were studying at university.
Yes.
And then when you ended, you were kind of unemployed, but starting a company and fumbling around. Or was that in the beginning?
Yeah. So at first we were like, well, basically we started working on our first game, which still isn't done. It's an unfinished game. That was the thing about Killing Your Darlings, which was called Viking Olympics, which is, some people might know. We've been out and showing it for like many years. We started working on that. We thought it was a great idea. We still think it's a great idea, but it has some obvious issues, which we learned through talking to publishers. But unfortunately, we only learned that maybe a year and a half into the project, and I wish we would have learned it like a year before. So maybe like after 6 months of working, I wish we could have learned it.
So I've consulted with a lot of young startups that do the first project, and if that project doesn't succeed, or if it's problematic or difficult to convince people it's good, it's very easy to give up. So why did you not give up? What made you continue?
I think it was a lot about what we talked about in the last slide. It's about just knowing, okay, this is our passion. Like this is what we want to do, right? Because and it's in some ways, again, I keep coming back to it. In some ways, it's actually very easy because we are programmers, both me and Michael. So we know that whenever we would like let's say a year down the line, let's say we're bankrupt, we have 0 kroner in our bank account, stuff like that. I can go tomorrow down to the bank and I can get a job where I earn like 50,000 kroner every month. Like every single day I can do that, right? So I will always have something to fall back on.
Is that
Because
kind
I
of
have
a saying you have? It almost sounds like whenever you are down and worried about the next month or how you get money, you basically look at each other and go, well, what's the worst that can happen? Okay,
yeah,
we go belly up and we just find a normal job, but we don't
yeah,
want that,
exactly.
so we continue. Is that the
Exactly.
mindset? Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much the mindset. It's just like the worst thing that can happen is tomorrow I can go down to Danske Bank and I can get a job for 50,000 kroner a year and I can be one of the top earners in society. That's the worst thing that can happen. The best thing that can happen is I can release an amazing game which has thousands of players all around the world, and everybody can be happy about it, and we can be happy in doing a passion thing.
Yeah.
That's
So
yeah.
still as writing programmers, it seems like I can almost hear the sigh behind that. Maybe
Yeah.
graphic artists have a more difficult time.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I think. Like many of the things are just my own experiences, and obviously, the closer you are to my life and my experiences, the easier it's going to be to relate. You're obviously going to have to find some other tricks if you don't have the same skill set as me. But I think even if I wasn't necessarily a programmer, right, you always have to keep in mind, okay, tomorrow I can always go and find another job. If everything goes wrong, if I go into debt, even if you go into debt a little bit, right, you can always say, okay, well, tomorrow I can go and I can find a job. Like I can work at the Netto or whatever, or like a grocery store or something like that. Like you can always find another job, but you cannot always just start a new company and make a new game.
So that's a way of dealing with that fear and the anxiety, which is basically telling you to stop worrying. You have to remind yourself that at least in most of the countries represented by the people joining this, is that you can, it's difficult to die from not succeeding with your company, because most
Exactly.
of these countries will actually make sure you get fed. And
Exactly.
I know it's not what you should focus on, but I think this is one of the worries that people have. So I want to ask you, what was your worst time? When was your company in the most crisis of giving up? Did you have a month where you didn't know how to pay your rent?
Yes, actually we actually did, and I guess finally, or maybe not finally, or maybe not surprisingly enough, it actually came during and because of Corona. And it's a lot of it is because in some ways I'm a very social person, and so is Michael, and we really like being in a social space and working and talking to people while we're working. That's sort of how we do. So the Corona time was especially hard for us because there was like 7 months, 6, 7, 8 months where we worked from home for those 6, 7 months, and we didn't necessarily have a lot of money back then as well, like to fund. So we were kind of like spending our savings, and we weren't really getting anywhere, and we were working from home. We couldn't meet with people, we couldn't do like all of the things that we usually do. It was really tough. Like that was the point where the first time in a serious way talked about like, okay, should we do something else? Like should we take a break like for half a year or something? um, because of Corona, because we couldn't do the things we liked doing that we normally do. And I would say after that we started being like, okay, we can fix these things if we actually just restructure a little bit. Corona is gonna pass very soon, and it did as well. Um, and we started getting some more work for hire. We started working on a bit of a different project, started getting some money back into the company, being able to more comfortably pay us. I think right now, with our current money and sort of planned projects, we have, I think, financials for at least 9 months planned already ahead. So that makes it like more relaxed to be able to say, okay, we can spend a month doing this, whatever.
So there are some questions, and I want to get into those because that's about work for hire. But before that, you mentioned savings, and you also did that a few times. I just want to demystify what you mean by that, because it sounds like, oh, we've got like millions saved up. I guess what you're talking about is that every time you get some money, even just a small amount, like 5,000 kroners, you try and spend as little as possible, and then put whatever you can to the side as a buffer. So even if it's just 1,000 kroner for 1 month, you put that aside and try not to spend it so that you have a buffer for the future. Is that how it works?
Exactly. If you like, and I guess a little bit about my my real life situation. I guess some background info. I'm a son of refugees, immigrants. My parents don't really have a lot of money. My upbringing was very poor. So I never really had a lot of savings myself in terms of like money, or I never really got used to spending a lot of money. So I guess you could say that's also a bit of an advantage. I never was used to spending like a ton of money every single day. So even on 5,000 krona a month, I could actually save maybe like 500 kroner that month, like on some months, or like 500, maybe 1,000 kroner I could save even on just like after paying for housing and food and transport and stuff like that. So, and if you save 1,000 kroner every single month, in 5 months you have an extra month, right? That's just how you have to think about it. So when I talk about savings, I talk about, well, during my education, I actually saved money while getting ESU from the government, right? People might think, oh, you get 5,500 kroner or something every month, right? But if you're actually good, you can actually save money from that. I had saved maybe, I think, 10,000, 15,000 kroner when I was done with my education. And then we got dagpenge, which was double that amount, right? And then suddenly you're saving like 3,000-4,000 kroners every single month when you're on dagpenge. So it's just about that, honestly. It's about whenever you have money, don't spend it on random shit if you don't need it. Don't spend it on really expensive equipment because you don't need a new computer every year. Spend it on your dream, your projects.
So obviously not everyone wants to live for that small amount of money. So, and you also prefer otherwise because you started doing work for hire. And the two questions here are, could you come up with some, Frederick asks, could you come up with some tips on how to do work for hire? Maybe some anecdotal stories or practical tips. Yeah.
Sure. I would say our number one source has actually been just being part of the incubator environment and being part of the startup environment, because there's other startups there and sometimes they get money from the government or stuff like that. So 2 times we have worked on somebody else's EU Booster project. So they have gotten money from EU Booster and they've used that money to pay us to do something for them. 2 times we've done that. And some other time, like whenever somebody else in the startup environment gets money, I guess they can, if you have some skills, like some skills that they can use, you can earn money that way. Another way that we have gotten work for hire is just contacting people, honestly, through Discord, just asking, hey, looking at, sometimes there's like a message to all. You can also Google, sometimes just Google all the Danish game companies. Sometimes they're hiring people for short-term
Can you
positions.
say something, examples of jobs you got in this way, or is that secret, or can you share?
Well, no, I mean, it's
very specific.
Sure. It's not secret, I guess. We just, I'm trying to remember because this was like 7 months ago or 8 months ago, but it was actually a really funny story. It was something like we contacted somebody who was doing mobile games, and because he said like a month ago he put up a posting and it was like, I need some people to work, or like developers to work on a mobile game for like a few months. So we contacted him and we set up a meeting with him, and he said, well, he set up the meeting but he actually wasn't looking for people anymore. And then we just spoke to him for like an hour, and then he said, well, you know, actually I might know somebody who's looking for people right now. And then he put us in contact with somebody else, and then through that we got like some work for 3 or 4 months. So yeah, it's just about reaching out to people who may or may not be looking for something through Discord, just messaging them, being like, hey, I saw you were looking for work, or do you need some people to work for a few months or something like that?
And how much do you get paid for these projects? Is that like a varying price depending on who you work with, or?
Yeah, so we generally say that it's a varying price depending on the sort of the, I guess, the sort of job. So if it's something that we really don't want to do, we want to get more money out of it, obviously. If it's something that's really fun, or it's somebody that we know, or like a startup person or whatever, I mean, we might do it a bit cheaper. We've done so very often, especially with like the other startup companies in the environment, because they also have like a tight budget. But like generally, again, you have to remember we're programmers, but generally we do like 250 kroner per hour sort of thing. And then just based off of,
Which is very low, by the way, for everyone listening, compared to industry standards, right?
exactly, yeah. Yeah. So, and the thing that you have to remember is you have to run a company, right? So you have to be a little bit business minded. So you have to think, how can I compete with everybody else who's looking to get a job right now? And the one thing you can always do, especially if you're bootstrapping, or I guess living very cheaply, is you can always compete on price. So if they have access to like a big Danish company which lends out programmers or whatever, there are a ton of them, but they are like 20,000 kroner more expensive than you are, and you can do the same job, or you can do the same job. You can just say, I'll do it for cheaper, and they have a reason to hire you instead of them, right? So you can compete on price always. Or I guess also quality or experience if you have that, but most likely if you're doing a startup, you don't necessarily have that. So yeah.
So Steen also asked, I'm not sure, did that also answer your question, Steen? You can also.
I was actually thinking if you could throw in some details, and for how long do you typically work, and both calendar-wise, and then is it typically just a few hours a week, or do you then normally go full week jobs?
Yeah, depends a lot on the project. So that's also one of the things that we can compete on, is that we're very flexible, because we can we're running our own company, right? So we can set our own hours. So we can say, okay, if you need somebody to work in like a short period of time, you need somebody to work like every single day for like 10 days or something, we can offer that. Or we can say, if you need just somebody a few days a week for like a longer time, we can also do that. So it just depends on the deal. We've done so far, we have done both of those. I guess we had one where we worked with the theater in Aarhus on a project, like an artsy kind of project, where we had to work for a month and a half, because that was like the time we had until the premiere of the show. So we did that. I guess that was full time for a month and a half. And the other thing, the thing that we're doing right now, is just like 1 or 2 times a week. It's like project based. So they have like, they tell us, go to, or go look at this this development post or whatever we have on the website, and it says we're working on this feature, and then we just say, okay, I'll take that, and then we work on that feature for like 2 times a week or something, and then and then we write our hours down and send them an invoice. So yeah, I would just say be flexible. If you can afford to, be flexible, because people really appreciate that, and especially tell them that you are flexible, because sometimes they have something that they don't have anybody else to do, because it's like, or maybe they're like, I need somebody to work on the weekend or whatever, and if you can do that, and then suddenly you can offer something they can't get otherwise.
So Monke or Monkey, I don't know the pronunciation. I wonder, has a question. How was your diet? Were you living healthily? You said you were cooking yourself.
Yeah, my diet was actually really good. So that was around the time where I was also really trying to get into like health stuff and whatever. So every single morning, I would eat 2 times a day, 2 big meals, and then every morning I would eat oatmeal with like some basic berries and whatever. And then for dinner, I would make some kind of healthy food, like a salad or like a wrap or something, like some Mexican salad or something like that. And that would just be what I ate every single day, like just oatmeal and then something like a healthy salad for dinner. And then just make sure you aren't hungry, I guess. And then, I mean, you can live for super cheap.
It sounds almost like a boot camp for a SEAL, military strict, trying to do that thing.
Pretty much.
It's very cool. So I wanted to ask, so
I brewed my own
you didn't
beers,
actually
yeah.
talk about what you've done. So everyone's thinking, oh, he's talked about doing a game that never got finished. So, but you also have a game on Steam and you're now working on a new project, right?
Yes. So so the first project we did was called the Viking Olympics or Valhalla Olympics. I would say maybe in total we spent almost a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years working on that, with like during the studies as well. And that never got finished, and that's probably never going to get finished unless there's like some new technological developments in the next time.
Did you get some income for that project? Did you get funding in some way? Okay.
Zero funding for that project. Everything was just, we spent our own time, put our own money into it. We are actually right. Okay, this is actually a completely new development, but right now, I don't know if anybody else in here has experience trying to get some money out of an innovation fund in a booster. Right now, they actually offered to everybody who put in applications in the past, I think 4 years, they offer to reevaluate your applications. So we actually just send in a reevaluation of an application for the Viking Olympics thing. So, and if that works out, we might actually try and finish that. But apart from that, one of the things that we learned the most from that is just like, don't build too much and don't just keep building because you don't have anything better to do. That was like the #1 thing we learned from that. But after we stopped working on that, we worked on a different game called Mineralf, which is actually a game where we got the idea from a game jam with Alan in Greno, where we made a prototype for it in 2 days. And then we spent, I think, a year, maybe a bit more than a year working on it. And now we released it. It was a really good experience to actually get the experience for completely releasing a relatively simple game. We earned a little bit of money in sales. I think we have around, it's not impressive, but maybe like 2,500 sales, something like that, which is, I guess, a little bit of money. Pays the bills a few months at least. And we're currently actually working on getting it onto Nintendo Switch and onto mobile as well, together with a publisher as well for the Switch. So that also might be something there. We'll have to see. But it's actually a game we're proud of, and we learned a lot, even though we did spend a bit more time than we should have on the game, especially during the late stages where you spent months on changing very, very small details that probably nobody's ever gonna notice. Yeah, that's good. And yeah, and right now,
are you doing the porting, or is the publisher doing it, or how are you porting?
So we're doing the porting to mobile, and the Nintendo Switch porting is gonna be done in collaboration with the publisher. So yeah. And the last project, the one that we're working on right now, we have, I guess, a bit higher expectations for it, and we're sort of trying to put in all the things we learned into that project, and hopefully we're already in talks a little bit, or actually a lot, with some investors and publishers there. So hopefully, I guess that's going to be our big project. But if not, I mean, we have sort of figured out, I guess, a formula to staying alive.
Which is kind of a bit of a mix of living cheap, doing a mix of your own projects and financing it through work for hire,
yeah,
and then saving up and just keeping getting that lottery ticket of trying the next project, trying to sell it, trying to pitch it, and eventually have one of them become a success, right?
Yeah, because it's honestly, it's gonna be extremely rare if your first project is a success. You're gonna be like a 0.001% person if you're lucky enough to do that. And you do require luck. Like it can't just be like skill. So, and if not, you have to figure out what's your backup plan for how do you get project number 2, project number 3. And for us, this is project number 3, right? So our very first project didn't even get finished, spent way too much time. Second project did get finished, is getting a little bit of traction, does have a little bit of a player base. There are some active players. We have one guy who has put 600 hours into Mineralf. And I think one other who has 300 or something like that. And they are like on our Discord every single day talking about it. That's always nice. So there's like a curve, right? So if the next one can be a bit better than that, then suddenly we're doing a business, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sorry to have to cut us short. We can continue maybe a few more minutes. There's some last minute questions. I think there's a good piece of advice. There's a guy in Viborg who can do. Peter says, so contact Peter or our Game Hub in Viborg, and they can put you in touch with Peter, and there's a guy who can do switch ports. Sure. That's cool for you or for everyone listening here. Steen is asking, I guess Steen is also a programmer, asking about, is there a way to reuse code and components, or
100%.
Are you just...
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of that, especially if you're working in Unity, right? Then there's a lot of just ways to do simple stuff, like how do you do a menu in a proper way? How do you do like just basic stuff? It's way faster the second time around. And you learn a lot of small tricks as well, especially if you're building the same kind of game. So Mineralf was a 2D game. And our next game that we're working on right now is also a 2D game. So there's a lot of like small tricks in terms of like how to play stuff to make it look good, and bugs that you will experience in Unity that you don't have to waste time on twice, stuff like that. There's definitely a lot of that, and much faster the second time.
And let's do the last question here, which is when you say don't build too much, do you have any criteria? When is enough, and when do you need to start looking at another project if it doesn't work?
Yeah, it's gonna be, so it's not gonna be a satisfying answer, because the answer is obviously gonna be depends. But you have to, it depends on what the strength of your game is, right? So you have to show what is the kick, like what is the main component of the game, like what is the fun part, but you don't need everything else building up to that necessarily. Right, so if you have like a core mechanic, like my core mechanic is I jump in a completely crazy way that nobody has ever seen before, right? You don't need the menus, you don't need the build up you just need to show this is one jump, or like this is 30 seconds or 1 minute of gameplay, and make it look good. That's really all there is to it. Just show like 1 minute of really good gameplay, make it look good. That's really all that anybody is gonna bother trying and playing before they make an opinion about the game. So yeah.
So one small thing, and that's because I know it is a problem for many programmers. You and Michael are programmers. How long did it take you to understand that you had to make it look good, and you could not just be programmers doing code and hoping to sell stuff?
4 years. We tried everything. We are literally making a revolutionary technology which will allow you to connect your smartphone and use it as a controller in a way that you've never seen before. And everybody's like, but when I look at the screen, it's just boxes. It's just like boxes flying around, but it's not a game. It's like,
yeah. So I guess that's how consumers consume games, through their eyes and through their feelings.
Consumers,
right?
Not just consumers, like even publishers, like everybody, right? Publishers, investors, like no, if they just see boxes, it's, even if you tell them everything you see, it's placeholder art, it's not the final thing or whatever, they want to see some graphical like quality of some kind. Like, and even if they tell you they don't, they're lying, right? You definitely need it.
So you spent some of your savings on artists, hiring them
yes.
in the beginning. Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, I know the story. So we need to wrap up. We've gone a bit over time, and we should keep the time box we have here. I'm pretty sure we have a Game Hub Denmark server. Some of the listeners here are there. They can probably chat you up. Maybe you won't have time to answer, but if someone
just
wants
DM,
to...
just shoot me a message on Discord. I'll always answer. I'm always on Discord.
Yeah. And for others, if they want to contact you, is that possible with email or something like that?
You can always contact us on the website, I guess, if you want to go through email. But I would say, if you want a quick direct message, just Discord, and you'll get a message within like an hour or something, almost 24 hours a day. If I'm not asleep, I'm at Discord.
That's very cool. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. I'll stop the recording now, and we'll end for today. So next time will be in February, and look at our channels, and we will post more about it when we get there. Have a nice Christmas, everyone.
Yeah.